Dr. Marie Fang. Welcome to the second video in our devotional series on the story of Job and the suffering that he went through. We're going to start right at the beginning in verse 1 of chapter 1 of the book of Job. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. So here we see that right from the get-go, the emphasis here, there's this man named Job, and he is a good person. This is such an important part to this story because what unfolds after this moment is just tragedy after tragedy for Job. If we read on in chapter 1, we see first he finds out that his livestock have died. Then he finds out immediately afterwards that his servants, essentially his employees, have all died. Then we learn immediately afterwards that his 10 children have all died. What a terrible tragedy, and they come to this upright, good man, this man who follows the Lord. Here's what Job does in response to finding this sequence of news out. In chapter 1, verse 20, it says, "At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, 'Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised.' In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing." What a crazy story, and we're only in chapter 1. My takeaway from this is, here is this wonderful man. I'm sure he wasn't perfect, but as good as we can get. He's sort of checking the boxes for good Christian, we're in the Old Testament, so we can say a good Jewish man. And yet, this series of tragedies happens to him. And what I love about this story, despite how terrible it is it captures our reality. I mean, how often do good people find themselves suffering? And this is part of our world, our story. It's not a new part of our world and our story. Here's Job, as good of a citizen as we can imagine, dealing with some of the worst suffering we can imagine. And I find that really comforting because it really debunks this common mythological theology passed around different Christian circles that somehow when bad things happen, it must be our fault. And what a tempting and appealing idea, because if somehow that were really true, it would allow us a sense of control over our lives. If bad things are happening to me, it's my responsibility to turn it around. If bad things are happening to me, I have the power to change it. I have control. And what a wonderful, soothing thing to feel like we have control over our lives. And certainly we have control over many different aspects of our lives. But certainly bad things happening to us are not our fault. It's not because we're a bad person. It's not because we must have not repented from sin, or we're carrying something that a previous generation did that is totally outside of our control. It really is something that we can't understand. It's something that's not our fault. And I don't claim to have the explanation for why bad things happen to good people, but I can say for sure that this is part of our reality. So if you are experiencing suffering, if bad things are happening to you, I encourage you to reflect on this and know that it's not because somehow you're not trusting God enough, or you didn't repent, or you don't have enough faith. I encourage you to find some peace in knowing this might be bigger than something you can understand in some false platitude like that. And there's no need to sort of live in the guilt and the sort of gnawing question of whether it might be your fault. So I encourage you to sit with that today as we end today's devotional in the book of Job, and I invite you to join me next time as we come to the next lesson in the book of Job.